panels that isn't, sold out completely. Congratulations, you found us. And I don't take that as a negative by any means. I take it as a positive. I know so many people have been turned away at so many panels, and that's really disappointing, I know, for many people. I'd rather have everybody happy, right? You guys are all here. You're happy you made it. Hopefully you don't leave for some Glen Keane talk or something. I don't know what else is going on, but I'm Tom Bancroft. I am the host today and moderator of this animation panel, and I also have the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast. I'm one half of that because of the brothers, right? I'm just a brother. So sorry, you got Tom, not Tony, if that's what you were looking for. I'm the better one. I'm funnier. Don't worry, okay? He's so serious. Oh, does anybody listen to the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast? Okay, 5 people. Good. That's all our listeners. Oh, thank you, panelists. This has been a little bit ragtag, all of LightBox. I don't know if you've noticed that, but on the panel side, it's been a little bit frantic and all that. And I don't know why, but we've all pulled it together. Is everybody happy? Is everybody having a good time at LightBox? Yeah? Good. Good. And that's the important part, right? You're learning. I know you're learning, because I am too. I'm coming here, I'm getting inspired, I'm learning stuff, meeting people. I love, if there's only one positive within what's going outside with all the sitting and the tickets and all that, is that you're meeting a lot of people, right? You're there for a good hour or so, talking to people and meeting people. That's really not a negative. I know it can be frustrating, but there's some real positives that are coming out of that. I'm going to let our people here, our animators, talk about who they are, the top, say, 3 things that they've worked on. I want to get to know that just as much as you do, and then we're going to talk about animation today. How fun is that, right? Like, this is how to bring characters to life is really the theme, I think, of what we're talking about. So let's start over here, and you guys introduce yourself, and then.
Hi, how's everybody doing? My name's Andrew Gordon. I was an animator at Pixar for 20 years. Some of the characters that I led were Mike Wazowski, Gil, Edna Mode, and worked on a lot of different movies and shorts. And then I went to DNEG and headed animation in London, worked briefly on the Minions 2 movie as a co-director, and then now I'm back in California working with Andrew Lloyd Webber's family on characters, music, and stories.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Toniko. I've worked for DreamWorks Animation, Netflix, and even small studios like Tonko House. I'm currently at Skybound for the show Invincible, but
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
but back at DreamWorks, I've worked at both feature and TV, with my animation experience mostly being with Kipo for character design and animation exploration on the early development of that show. And some animation for Netflix. Yep.
Okay. Scoot your chair a little closer. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm currently working at Pixar. My last movie there was Lightyear. Previously, I was at Blue Sky, worked on Spies in Disguise. I was also at Sony. I was working on Over the Moon and Mitchells vs. the Machines. Also been to Animalogic and worked on the Lego movies. And yeah, currently at Pixar on the new movie called Alio.
Nice. And guys, really lean in there. Andrew's doing a great job of it. He's a pro. He's a podcaster. So, but lean into those mics, because I'm not sure. Did you guys hear her very well? I'm not. Okay, good. Okay.
Roger.
I'm just really loud. Okay. So, well, guys, what we have here is a really distinguished panel. Okay. And I'm going to say your name wrong. Do it again. Toniko, sorry, Toniko. I know you very well. I just never say your name, but in my head I do, and I say it wrong. So, Toniko, you're more on the 2D side, right? And still, have you ever gone into the CG side?
Not really. I mostly work as a storyboard artist, so I've been drawing all the time, but I work mostly as a 2D animator doing different styles for independent and sometimes for major studios.
Right, and that's how I know you from. If you follow him on any of the Grams and the YouTubes and stuff like that, he's always doing some amazing lessons A lot of really wonderful 2D animation lessons that you've done through the years, and just showing your process many times too, which is also really, really helpful and educational. So, by the way, are you putting those out? I know we talked once, I think it was LightBox, LightBox 2019. Have you put out a lot of your content as far as, the 2D art instruction?
Yeah, I mean, I sell like a video course on my Gumroad page, but I also do stuff for free on YouTube because I do believe that there are things that still should be free, accessible, and I like talking about that stuff regardless. And it's always like this thing where every time I do 2D animation, I'm always discovering something new, whether it's like rule breaking or experimenting with it. It's like, oh, I want to talk about this. Maybe I'm an idiot. People think this is really weird. Or it could be like, this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. But I've always been trying to experiment with what I can do with 2D animation, especially in the independent scene.
Let's run with that, guys. So we have two CG animators here too, and how important is it? I'm just going to let you grab this question, whoever wants it, I guess. How important is it to know 2D animation before you get into computer animation?
Well, I think that it's really important. How many people here are animators or would consider themselves wanting to be animators?
Oh, wow.
I think that you have to at least understand, if you can't draw really well, you have to really study 2D animation and kind of immerse yourself and sort of marinate in it and try it, because it has to do with great poses and appeal. A lot of these higher end places like Pixar or Disney have a draw over artist now. That's a luxury, but most places don't have that. So you have to have some chops to understand what a good pose is. And I think that's what 2D animation does. It also allows you to be able to flip, or keyboard flip, and in a way that lets you feel animation. So I would say it's a huge thing.
And are you going to take Andrew down on that?
No, actually, I agree because when I was studying to be an animator, I was a chair for 4 years, and I did live drawing like almost every day for 2 hours at least. And at the beginning, I didn't fully understand why they're making us do all this, like what has to do with it. But now that after a few years of working as an animator, just posing the characters and understanding balance and like anatomy and how everything should move, it really helps to know how to draw, how to understand anatomy, live drawing, and if you did get a chance to animate in 2D, even if it's for yourself, you do get a really good understanding on like in-betweens and all the principles of animation. You can really understand them so much better when you're drawing every frame.
I just wanted to add
Yeah,
to
go
that.
ahead.
I mean, I also want to add that like 3D is hard because I know with 2D, you can like draw it, you have the idea there, and you can draw it. But with 3D, from my experience doing it a bit here and there, you kind of have to think about the articulation of like joints and all that, the IK, the FK. It's a lot more technical, and things kind of have to work. Even if you do have to like cheat it or shift things around to make it work in a 2D graphic sensibility, it does require a lot of thinking. So I just don't like. I also just want to say like 3D is a whole other world too. It is supported by 2D knowledge, but I think 3D is another whole game that even I find difficult to get into.
Yeah, so, and I'm a 2D animator. I'm gonna, I feel like I'm an alcoholic. I'm a 2D animator. I'm gonna pass it. But that was my background at Disney for many, many years, and I've tried computer animation. I call it CG animation, by the way. 3D animation is the exact same thing, by the way, if anybody's newbies here. Just different terminologies. But I like you. It was I was being sold, and I want to hear your guys' thought on this, that, okay, you're a 2D animator, you can transition. This was during the transition, by the way. This was, say, 90s, 2000s-ish, when 2D was kind of going away, CG was coming in, basically destroying 2D, raping and pillaging. And anyway, it was taking over, and so I ended up going to an animation studio that was doing computer animation. It was VeggieTales, so it was a lot easier. Thank you. It was a lot easier animation, okay? I didn't have arms and legs to deal with. It was a great entry level to CG animation. But I was being told, and I know a lot of my friends that were going from 2D transitioning into computer animation were being told, oh, it's just another tool. Just like a pencil, it's another tool, and blah, blah, all the things that you know are just going to translate. That was a lie. I just want to say this. So I want to hear this from you guys, them first, but I want to hear your frustrations too. But I think it's a bigger difference. And tell me if that's your background, if you were trained in 2D, maybe in school, and then made that transition or not. But go ahead, Andrea. Do you see that frustration? Because I know you were there long enough at Pixar that you know a lot of 2D people making that transition.
Well, I got into Pixar when there was kind of a ragtag, weird group of animators, and a lot of them, people didn't know how to do animation, like in terms of computer animation. They were stop motion animators somewhere, 2D animators somewhere, guys that worked at NASA that happened to know how to use a computer. But what the leveled playing field that CG has over 2D animation is that in 2D, you had to be a damn good draftsman, like a James Baxter, to really be like, wow, like that guy can draw. In 3D, some people, and there's somebody right upstairs who is a great example of it, one of the best animators at Pixar, Mike Makarovich. He couldn't draw very well at all, but he was an incredible actor. And polish and nuance and arcs and flaring of the eyes. So it really does level the playing field, CG. And you have to be a good actor.
Right.
And then you have to understand all that appeal and design and all that other stuff. You know, you have to, that kind of goes on top of it.
And do you feel like somebody like him, and maybe not him specifically, but that was also being sort of taught at Pixar? Was like,
It was.
okay, for the people that were more, say, programming side, learning what silhouette is and things like that.
Yeah, there was a thing called PU, Pixar University, and it turned into PU Tube, which is like all these videos, which I'm sure you could talk about. And we basically, it was like glomming on to everybody. That was the thing, it was like, you would constantly, when I got there were like 3 people that were good. It was Doug Sweetland, Mark Oftedal, and John Kars. And we were always, how the hell are these guys doing this? And then everybody would try to like open up their shots and look at their splines and and try to figure out what was going on. And then it became like a sharing thing. Because Steve Jobs was there while I was there. He used to say, look, if we do this all together, it'll be like all boats in the harbor rising. Your movies are going to get better, your shots are going to get better. So that was the culture of learning from each other constantly, and that's what you really have to do.
And I can add that culture still exists, because technology is always moving forward and is developing. There's new tools always trying to help us make things faster and better. So I think like being a 3D animator, you always have to just be in peace with the fact that you always have to learn new things constantly, because it's not perfect. Everything we have is always evolving, and they're always trying to just erase the boundary between the computer and the artist, so you will have like as easier way as possible to just do your craft and not be bogged down by technicalities.
Toniko?
Yeah, I want to add to both of you guys. Sorry.
There it is. It's not your butt, it's your mouth that needs to get closer.
It's killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you like compare, have you guys seen that clip of Pete Docter back in the 90s animating Woody? Like, there's a demo of like him animating, like, and he's like, CG animation is easy. And he was doing a demo. It's like, here, I type in the degrees of how much I want the joint to move. Look, it did it. It's all real time. And we're like, I would kill myself if I had to work that way. But now, like, you know, because artists are working together with like people who are, you know, technical, like with the technology and then artistry, it's like now it's so easy. I wouldn't say easy, but it's definitely a lot more smooth for artists to get into to CG animation, where you can actually like, you know, click on a limb and just drag it around. Not saying it's that easy, but it's definitely, the tools are getting more friendlier for artists, where artists do have a lot more control and they can be more expressive and creative. So
Yeah, be thankful you're not breaking in the 80s or 90s especially into computer animation. This is a lot better time to get into it. So I do want to go into acting. So this should be really what this talk is about, because how you animate and all that is not exactly great thing to verbally communicate, right? You want to show with drawings, you want to show with actually getting on the equipment and things like that. But the one thing that not enough people talk about is that we were called back in the Disney days, and we were actors with a pencil, right? Obviously, now you're an actor with a stylus. Now you're an actor with a mouse. So tell us about that. Like, I remember, okay, so my first story on this is I went to CalArts, and I realized very quickly that and I was at school, actually, and one of my classmates was Pete Docter. And so I'm that old, yes. And so Pete, we discovered very quickly, he didn't draw very well. Like my brother and I have a twin, and we were always about the art. We were about, like, we got to be the best artists here at CalArts, because that's what happens when you go to Disney. If you're the best artist, you rise in the ranks, and there's some truth to that. But what I really discovered and learned literally from Pete, and I tell him this, but you can pass it on, is that, you know, he would come in and he would turn in assignments and stuff, and these were just drawings, like for design class, whatever, and it would be kind of crude drawings. And he still has a kind of a crude style, you know, and so, but he would stick up these crude drawings, and the instructors would always be like, who did this one, right? We wouldn't sign him and stuff. This one, oh, I see this, and they would start talking about that piece, whether it was a character or just shapes and colored shapes for a design class. It was always Pete. It would always go back to him because he was thinking about the story the whole time. He was always thinking about that. And this was freshman year all the way to the end. And we started realizing, we learned more from Pete in some ways than we did from our instructors, because we started realizing he was making personalities. He was telling stories every single assignment. And he was kicking our butts, even though we were out drawing him, right? And we thought that's what it was all about. And I know that that's true. You're all going to hear that now from everybody in the industry, is that really it's the performance, right? So let's talk about now look, we're all introverts, right? To some degree, or more radical degrees for others. How do we become actors with a pencil or a stylus? And, you know, kind of how important is that? Anna, tell us about your journey of sort of discovering, oh, I got to up my chops there, not just the technical side.
Yeah, so I started animating in TV, and we never had time to think much about acting. It was all really quick. There was never shooting reference. There was never talking to your peers about acting choices. You're just like, go make decisions quickly, pose to pose, animate. And then when I transitioned into features, I needed to change all that. I needed to go slower, think more about acting. And in the studios that I was working at the time, like Sony, they wanted to see, actually your first pass, they actually wanted only to see your reference pass. So you would have to film yourself acting in the same shot and different variations, and then they would pick approximately the directions which to go. And then another challenge was to learn actually how to use the reference, not to rotoscope it, but just take the ideas and the main beats and accents, or even use a few clips and just take the best from each one, and learn how to effectively translate it into your shot, like without just doing like a rotoscope, but just taking the ideas. And also like learning how to shoot reference was hard, because it's difficult to act out something perfectly or find ideas, and especially if you're not an actor. I mean, we're not we are, but we aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So that was evolving, and then eventually it became like second nature after you do it a lot. And now at Pixar, a lot of people don't use reference. Some do, some don't, so everybody works whatever works best for them. I know an animator that records the audio, goes outside, closes their eyes, and just imagines how things work. Other animators draw thumbnails. Other animator, like I like to shoot ref almost every time, just at least to act it out and feel. And sometimes when you start acting it out and feeling it, you actually get better ideas, or you find out a problem that you wouldn't have even imagined without acting it out. So I think whatever works for you, and there's no rules about it.
I will say when I was in CalArts and animation school, I will say the acting and the performance part was the most frustrating part about animation, because it's one of those things where you can't really teach. It's one of those things where it does require a bit of honesty. That it does have to come from your own personal experiences. And when I applied for Disney animation internships back when I was in school, I was constantly told, good job, but you're not ready. You need to think about your strong, bold poses and acting in it. It was this very generic, general terms that didn't help me. It's like, okay, I needed to work on acting, but how do I even go about that? Do I study actors? Do I study film? So, one of my teachers, Chris Sonnenberg at the time, I think the thing that he told me that really, really helped me was, just focus on trying to animate a character breathing first, and then try to think about what the character's thinking. So you're gonna focus more on the eyes or things like that. And if you take out like the strong poses or the complex acting and like silhouettes and all that, and you just start focusing on the how do I evoke life and in this character, then you can slowly start to think, be more creative on like, okay, how do I show this character's actually a living thing, and how do I show it thinking? And then you can ask more questions. Okay, so what is their overall character? Are they, tired all the time? Are they active all the time? Are they old? Are they young? And you can get even more complex, like what's their social status or their culture, because that also affects with, how they shake their hands with someone else. But I think at the end of the day, the bit where it's all about just trying to animate a character breathing was enough for me to like have a start of, okay, the important thing is let's think about life first, and then we can think about the more complex things. So, I would say for me at least, I think when I separated the whole complex like silhouettes and poses and just focused on like the period part of the performance, I think it started to click for me. And then I would thumbnail more if I wanted something more specific, because I would thumbnail the same pose over and over again until I got something that felt really honest to me.
Mm.
You said actors with mouths. I would say we're actors without residuals.
Without residuals. Oh, I love that.
Acting, I think you have to kind of know what you're good at, first off. I was always the person when I was when I was animating that would get like, give that to Gordon, he's from New Jersey, And so I would get characters that were like, Raz, my tender oozing blossom, you look very good today, And so I would get all these mincy kind of like Catskillish kind of Jewish character. No, I'm just joking. Like characters that had this New York attitude, and I found it very difficult to animate subtle. And so I would be cast more comedic roles. But when I had the opportunity to do difficult scenes that had emotion, it was really hard for me. So you have to kind of know what you're good at and then lean into that, then try something different. But in terms of how you get there, there's so many different ways. If you look at somebody like Daniel Day-Lewis, he's a method actor. He gets inside the skin of a character. He literally becomes that character. You kind of have to become your character a little bit when you're living with this. I would open up a shot and I would look at Edna and I'd be like, you again today. And so I would have to it would almost like a relationship with that character, and you start to see the acting. But then, if you weren't doing a good job, and this happens, and if you're not struggling really hard and you're like killing yourself, then you're kind of not doing that great of a job. I used to sit next to this genius animator named Doug Sweetland, and he would yell and scream, and his computer would burn up, and he would cry, and then he would like stomp his feet, and I was like, "Are you all right?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, what?" And I'd be like, "I guess that's what it takes,
Yeah.
And so I just would say get people to look at your stuff, lean into what you're good at, and try different things that are out of your comfort zone, so you don't get typecast.
Okay, so I'm going to go specific here. I really want to hear you guys tell a story of a situation you were in where it was a difficult challenge, okay? And you started going there with Edna maybe, but like a specific scene even. So, and I'll start. I'm going to hopefully warm this up. So I created Mushu the Dragon in Mulan, and I remember there was a shot. I'm going to shorten this story as much as I can because I'm supposed to be moderating, but I was at the very beginning of the film, I almost lost my job. A lot of people don't know this part of the story. I don't like to go into it too deep, but Mushu had grown and grown through the script process. I was on the film very early. I was designing the character, and then we got into production animation, And by that point, they had thrown in Eddie Murphy now, and now this is like the big wigs and the Michael Eisners and stuff that were presidents of the company. We're starting to go, oh, wait a second, the only real big name celebrity is this Mushu character. Eddie Murphy's doing that. Who's animating that? Oh, this newbie, Tom Bancroft, right? It was my first time being a supervising animator. They didn't think I could do it. They were like, shouldn't this be Eric Goldberg? Shouldn't this be, and literally they told me, the directors, if this was being done in California, this was being done in Florida studio, if it was being done in California, Eric would be doing Mushu. And so I had to also, so what they were basically saying is, you have to be that good, Tom. Why aren't you? And so I was just doing animation tests, and they were going okay, but they were like, we need better than the average Disney animator. And by the way, I think we all are that way, where we go, I'm at Disney Animation, isn't that the top? Well, it turns out when you get there, by the way, it is not the top. You might want to go even further and climb that ladder within the company, get better characters, better, right? We're always wanting better shots and better characters. And so I'd finally gotten to that point, but I was about to lose it if I didn't watch it. And so what I had to figure out was, what is that thing that they're not saying that I need to bring to this, okay? Because they would go, okay, here's the shot. So one of my very first shots that I did was that sequence where Mushu's behind her sash that she has. She's dressed as a man going into the army encampment for the first time. It's sequence 8, by the way. And so sequence 8, she's going in, and he's telling her, oh, this is how you're a man, right? You know, pat him on the butt. You know, he's telling her all the wrong things. So, like, spit a lot, you know. And so she gets into trouble. She busts everything up, and it causes disaster. And there's this one little sequence where it's called the name game kind of thing, where, you know, Shang is yelling at her and going, what's your name, soldier? And she's like, Ling. You know, he's telling her these names. She can't think of her name. Anyway, it all leads up to this gag at the end, which is where he says, Achu. Achu was my best friend growing up, or something like that. And she goes, Achu, and he goes, you know, he says, Achu, and then the gag is, then Mushu says, Gesundheit, I kill myself, right? And so I listened to that line over and over again. By the way, when they gave me that scene, and this is issuing, you get a scene from a director, they issue it to you, and now it's yours to try and make into something. And you have the storyboards to go by, and then the voice track in this case, right? And so it's 2 poses. It's literally 2 poses. It's Mushu leaned out, holding onto her scarf, going Gesundheit, and then it's like him laughing, haha, I kill myself. That's the storyboards. I'm going, okay, how do I make this something that is going to keep my job, right? If I just do what's given to me in the storyboards, and by the way, they said, it's getting a laugh right now, don't kill it. That was their instructions, okay? And so I knew that anything I do, I couldn't screw it up, so how do I add to that? And it's a short thing. So as I listen to the dialogue over and over again, I start noticing that Eddie Murphy has a little bit of subtext. Subtext is an acting term, and it's all about what are they actually thinking. It could be the opposite of what you're saying. If you're saying to someone, hey, I really like your dress, you could say that and mean it, or you could say, oh, I really like your dress. And it could feel either creepy or like I really don't mean that. In this case, he was saying, Gesundheit, I killed myself. And he did a little warble after I listened to it a few times. And what that meant was, the subtext was, I'm laughing so hard I'm crying, right? That little warble was what he meant by that. And so he did that with his face probably in the recording session, but I didn't see it. I wasn't there when he recorded that line. So I had to just listen to it over and over again. And it wasn't in the boards because he recorded after it was storyboarded. And so when I animated that scene, the extra that I could bring was, I kept the Gesundheit, he does that, but as he kind of goes back, he grabs her scarf and he kind of like uses it as tissue. I killed myself. And it was that one little thing. By the way, that and a few other scenes after that kept my job, because they saw that I was bringing something. I was finding how to make Mushu special in all of these scenes. Like, how would Mushu do that line? How would Mushu, not just any other character? So these are the kind of stories I'd love to hear. Hopefully, as I'm telling that, you're thinking of stuff. Those really specific times where you were like, okay, this is a line that they want this, but I'm going to maybe give them a little something different, and hopefully it worked. I don't know. And if you can't think of one, I'm being very specific, I know, and I'm putting you on the spot. That's fine, but these are the challenges that we face, right? and you started going there with Edna. You didn't feel like being Edna that day, I'm guessing. And so you're opening it up and like, I have to get into this mode.
I mean, I have a couple of stories. One was when I first started there, I was a young animator and I didn't know anything. And I remember worshiping John Lasseter because for all the shorts. And I came in there and I got a shot with a blood, it was a mosquito drinking a blood drop. And do you remember that from
Bug's Life.
Yeah, Bug's Life. And so I was like, I don't think he should, I'm arguing with John Lasseter, the guy who runs the studio. I don't think he should do it this way. It should be this way. Like he chops into it and he was like, no, I don't think so. He should do it like this. Like he's like poking it like that. And I argued with him. And I tried my way and I was wrong. I ended up having to do the shot over. But I kind of realized that was really what was interesting, was that animators, if you don't, like, this is your chance to argue your point and to do it your way in the blocking. And I think that's what I learned, is that, like, you're only going to get one chance to do it your way before somebody tells you to do it their way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the point, is that you don't always just want to be like, yes, whatever you want. You want to, like, get your feeling and your, color it with what you are. And so there were a couple of things where I really remember, trying that, even if it didn't work.
I mean, I just wanted to add to that because I think it's also important for, for animators or artists to sort of like get their point across with the people they're working for, the directors, to say, hey, here's my intentions of what I was going for. What do you think? And that could be another conversation. Because when I did like animation stuff for Kipo and another movie, it changed the title, Back into the Outback, before it was called Underground Uglies. But I think at the end of the day, acting is also pretty subjective. So you can have the same line, but have very different approaches to it. But sometimes people get fixated on a very specific way of how they want to see the acting. So it's like, oh, show surprise. Is it like all these like poses where I'm more like, so I tend to I'll animate it and they'll say, I don't feel the surprise. I think surprise is more like that. I'm like, I don't feel that way, but okay, let's try it. So I think it's also just trying to have a conversation of like, our idea of surprise, what is that? And we can get more specific and we can talk about like, okay, why am I portraying surprise like this? Well, it's because it's based on a personal experience. Because there's, sometimes people don't really know what they're looking for. Like for the people that I've worked with, I'll do something, they'll say, well, it's more like this. And I'll do that. They're like, I don't know, maybe we can go back. So I ended up redoing animation tests again and again, to the point where I'm like, I don't know how to act anymore. I don't know how to perform. What am I doing right now? And you're listening to the same sound clip over and over again until it doesn't even become a voice. It becomes an abstract sound. Mm-hmm. It just becomes wobble. And you're listening to it over and over again to the point where you just don't recognize what it is anymore. It's maddening. I mean, I used to work for VeggieTales, like for storyboarding and not animating, but I did a musical sequence and having to listen to that song again and again. I still remember it. It's ingrained. We love it in the arc. We love it in the arc. Well, dance until it's dark. And it was just, it was fun. VeggieTales was one of my first experiences in the industry.
That's funny.
You don't have to draw anatomy. It was just fruits and things float around them. Oh, it was a great way to learn both animation and boarding.
And the Bible.
Yeah.
And the Bible. Yeah.
Beautiful cucumbers and tomatoes. But yeah, I would say just make sure everyone's on the same boat so you don't have to keep redoing stuff.
I have a term that I tell my students around that time of that Mushu story. I kind of developed this mantra of like, don't give them what they ask for, give them what they want. Because those are two different things. They think they're asking for something, and in this case it was, here, just do this scene, it's getting a laugh. but I knew they wanted something extra if there was something extra I could bring there. They always want a surprise, but they don't want to be surprise shocked. Like, what did you do? You know, you just wasted a week and now we're going to not meet our quota and all these things, right? It's a gamble even in the feature film side. Feature film, you have much more time. You can be more experimental than in the TV side. You were talking about that, Anna. So, but that's what they want. They honestly do want you to make it better. You're not supposed to just, in the perfect world, I will say that. Now, there are directors that are just like, just do what's exactly on the boards. And I have an animation company now, and I have a couple animators we're doing, you know, hand-drawn 2D animation, and I'm telling them, no, I come from the Disney side. I want you to surprise me. I don't want you to just do what's there. Our boards are like barely halfway to the point of the humor and stuff. You got to bring the rest of the humor. So, okay, and I'm stealing from you, so I want you to talk now, but, you know, where have you been in that kind of journey of, like, being issued something and, like, what do I do with this?
I've had a lot of interesting experience, actually, even like recently. I've been working on one of the Doug Days shorts with Bob Peterson. That's like Carl and Doug the dog. And I had to actually suddenly become a grandpa. And my grandfather passed away a long time ago, and I wasn't, all I could do is just guess. So it was really like, and a dog as well, so I can't even show reference. So that was really interesting, and I was giving the advice at Pixar. I was a very careful animator for most of my career. I wanted, like, tell me what you want, I'll do exactly that, and I don't want to be wrong, so I'll do just exactly that. But then recently I realized that it's actually good to surprise it, to try something new, because then you'll elevate it and you will do something that nobody thought about. And even if you try something new and it's wrong, it's still worth it. Like, you shouldn't be afraid, at least in that environment. So I started trying new things, and it was actually a lot of fun. Even though not a lot of them stuck, it was worthwhile to do it, and you have to have enough courage to actually try. And I also realized that a lot of things really are subjective, because I tried like a head scratch on Carl, and I just, for some reason, my instinct said that a grandpa will scratch his head like this. And then we showed it to the director, to Bob, and he loved it. He said, wow, that's actually a really surprising good idea. But my animation supervisor didn't agree, and he didn't like it, and he said that it's complicated and we should scratch it differently. And then I was already not involved in that. I just let them settle on it. But I just saw how interesting it is that, you know, it's very, very subjective. And I saw that happening quite a lot. So that was a lesson to learn. Like, don't judge yourself on your ideas. Just try something. Don't try to guess what's right and wrong, because it is art at the end of the day. And I had another shot that I basically had to figure it out. It wasn't really planned, and it was basically left up to me to figure out what's happening, including shot range, including camera, just everything. And I never had that happen to me before to that extent, and it was actually an interesting challenge. And first I kind of panicked for a little bit, and I thought, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? This is gonna blow through the deadline, and it's a long shot, and oh my God, like, I'm gonna get fired and whatnot. And then I kind of relaxed, and I was like, no, this is an opportunity to save it. That's actually great. This is a great opportunity to show that I can do it.
You know, it's funny you should say the head scratch. I think as animators, you always want to be open to what we call happy accidents. I was on La Luna once, and Enrico, we were trying to figure out what to do with the character after they give him the present, like pat him on the head, or does he scratch, give him a little of this? And then I kept doing one after the other. How about this? How about this? And then just as a mistake, I did him tugging his ear. And then Enrico said, oh, how did you know that that's Happy Birthday in Italy? And I was like, it is? And so, you really want to be open to, like, mistakes, actually. And I think that's a fun tip. One other thing I will say is that Brad Bird used to say this to us a lot, and if you ever get a chance to hear Brad talk, he's literally trained by Milt Kahl, and like he's one of the ones that goes back. He used to get so upset about everything. He would say, man, I can't stand like animation mouth shapes. They're so lame, and there's no, people don't talk like that.
Right.
Look at the news. Look at people and actors. Look at how they talk out of the side of their mouth. And he would just, the word that, we used to say a lot back in those days was specificity. Now it's pretty common. But specificity is like the gold that you should all be searching for. Is not cliche, not, hey, I don't know, like how does somebody like Miyazaki, his characters are specific. He gave a talk, and he described the character opening up a rusty faucet, and he described the way the water came out of it and the way that the rusted handle moved, and I was like, that is animation. That is storytelling, and specificity should be a part of everything you do.
What a great example. That's not, any other animator just turned on the faucet, right? I hope you guys are learning stuff. I do want to have a few Q&As. I don't know if we have a mic that can go around, but just say it and I'll repeat it if they can't hear it. Awesome, we already got one. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much. I had a quick question about acting in terms of, have you ever been stumped with a performance shot where you don't really know how to approach the acting, or it's like a situation that's kind of out there and you're not really sure what to do with it? And then how to, like, do you have a research process when you book or way to approach it, I guess? It's kind of a long-winded way of saying it.
Toniko.
I can only think of one right now, but I'm pretty sure it'll start flowing back. But I know usually the good storyboards help. When I was doing stuff for Clarence, even though the storyboards were really limited, I think the ideas were there. I could tell, okay, they wanted theatrical acting. But then there were times, this was a recent Netflix thing, adult show that I worked on, and I think...
Which one?
It's called Blood Samurai, but it's not yet, there's no trailer of it yet. But because it's set in like Japan, in the, I can't remember, 16th century, I remember trying to figure out how to sort of like, not just draw the characters, but also how they perform, because, Western acting and like Eastern, when you see like Eastern or Japanese live action films, like the way they talk and the acting is a lot more nuanced. It's not as theatrical. So that was a big challenge for me to kind of figure out, okay, how do I get this, like you said, I can't say this word properly,
Specificity.
Just like, okay, how do I become so specific to the acting where sorry, I lost my chain of thought. Yeah.
Specificity.
Yeah, how do I get that? How do I get there?
Right.
So, I would also like talk to some other animation friends to have their thoughts and ideas, because I think sometimes when I'm out of idea or creative juices, I'll ask another animator on how they go about it. I know talking to my friend Rude Beneke a lot, really great animator.
Oh, he is. I worked with him in Florida.
Yeah,
Amazing.
he's great. And he would like say, oh, watch these films and watch this. So I'd watch like Kurosawa films and really pay attention to like how each character talked. And I think that's when I kind of understood the language of what this show was looking for. But I think like it doesn't hurt to reach out to other people for like, how would you go about this?
I make my peers act out scenes for me. And I do that all, and it helps so much. And you don't really don't direct them too much. I don't give them too much instructions because I don't want to box them into anything. And I say, okay, character afraid, or a character needs to turn around and do something. Do it. Do it 5 different ways for me. We don't even film it. I just watch what they're doing. And it's amazing, actually, the results you get.
Good stuff. Yeah, acting is being natural, really. That's the hardest thing to do. You were going into that when you were hearing the dialogue over and over again, Toniko, and it just becomes garbled sounds. The acting is the very first time you say something, right? And like you're saying, not telling your friends not too much about this. Here's the line, just do it. And how you would do it the first time is probably going to be the most natural most of the time. But then you got to sort of go back and analyze it. Wait, how did I do that? I went like this, and then I lift my hand. Was it wrist first? Then and you kind of like as an animator, then you have to sort of secondarily figure out what you just did naturally. That's what I found anyway. Is that as an animator, I had to sort of back into it. I had to be as natural as possible. Videotaping, of course. Now I'm talking about pre-iPhone, where you could just tape yourself really quickly. Yeah, being natural is the goal. What's your natural reaction? If I said this to you, what would you be thinking? How would that make you react? So any other, yeah. Yeah.
I'm such a big fan of all your work, and I was very curious in terms of how you're developing characters when you know that they're having like this history or historical background. So like Mike Wazowski, you have the Monsters Inc. version of her, and you also have the Monsters University version of them. How is that coming to you? With Invincible, like crossovers for like season 2, like how are you developing these characters next phase, and then even for like Lightyear, like Buzz Lightyear has like Toy Story as a background, now he's having a movie. So the consistency of these characters from an art style, but also story perspective, I was wondering how much in depth does that like really influence you when you're coming into like this newer story or this newer universe that they're part of?
That's great. Andrew, you want to start?
It's a great question. I think that's pretty much pre-production. It's basically, you go in and you get this character. They call it a Pixar character buddying. They don't like to call it leads because of the ego thing. But I think on Monsters it was like, yeah, he's Sullivan's helper. But then you talk to the story people and you say, well, who is he in the story? Well, he's like a sidekick. He doesn't really, he's the one that's going to cut Sullivan down to size and keep him like, humble, and he's like his coach and his best friend. But then you really start to learn that like, well, he really is this character that has this belief system. He believes that he could be the best scarer ever in Monsters U. He quickly learns that he could never be the best because he's not scary. But he has a function in the story that makes it so that he can do other things. And that's what he ultimately learns, is that he can be really helpful in other ways. So you have to know story-wise that stuff. Mannerisms-wise, as an animator, that's a little different. You have to understand, okay, he's a college student now. He's not 30 or whatever he's supposed to be, 28 in Monsters Incorporated. He's young, he's a little bit more spry, he's got the same personality, maybe a little bit of the different mouth shapes. So you have to kind of answer all those questions like a character actor would answer it. How do they walk? How do they gesture? What's the little backstory that you could write? And then you just kind of have to sort of marinate in it with that character for a while. Make model sheets, do the hand poses, do the expressions, do the animation tests. Like, you're just doing as much stuff so that by the time production starts, some people that are just coming on the show have something to start with. Then, ironically, somebody will come on the show and then they'll be like, and knock it out of the park, and they'll be like, well, now they're the go-to person. And that's really the real way it should be in the animation industry. And that's one of the reasons why there are no quote-unquote lead animators anymore at places, because anybody should be the lead that does the best shot.
Interesting. I didn't even know that. You're saying that's...
I don't know if that's the case still, but I do remember Monsters, Inc. was the only time there were lead animators at Pixar. Then it was character buddies, and basically whoever did the best shot, they were kind of the go-to person now for that character. Like, go to that person, they just did the best performance.
That's interesting.
Is that true?
Does that feel true now, Anna?
Well, on Lightyear, we did have supervisors, and there was a character lead, but only for one or two main characters.
Got
we
it.
still had it, but it was very flexible, and it's up to you to consult them. But it's a really good question because Dave Devan, the supervisor on Lightyear, he actually, his philosophy is that you have to know the movie, and your shot should never scream. Like it should always fit in and be almost unnoticeable, and that's from knowing the story and feeling the tone of the sequence and where your shot is actually in the sequence. So that also indicates your acting. And I know some animators who are actually studying the script and thinking at this point of the story, my shot, my character, how are they feeling? Even if it's just a surprise or a reaction, it depends what kind of a reaction or what kind of acting choice depends where it is. Not only in the sequence, in the whole movie. Maybe the character by now is matured or changed. So that would be a completely different, acting choice. So I think story is always what's driving everything.
I love these questions. We're getting into deep dives. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we talk about you guys, okay? We're here for you. There's no doubt about it. We love talking about what we've done. There's no doubt about that, too. But I know you're here because you want to get into the industry, right? Can we raise our hands and say, agree with that? Yeah? Okay. So let's hear that question. That's what we're waiting for. Go ahead. What's your question about breaking into the industry? How do we break into the industry? Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's make this about you guys for this second. So I'm at a good animation school. Let's assume we're at a good animation school at this point. And if you're in high school, you're going to find that good animation school. Let's just assume. That's a whole nother discussion, by the way. But we're there. Now, you're not being told, probably, by most of your professors, unless they're from the industry, by the way, what to do. They're a little bit question mark all the time going, well, this is the techniques, but they don't know what these guys want to see if you're going to show your work to them, right? They don't know that. They haven't been in the industry. They can't tell you that. By the way, some of you have already hit that block, right? You've already figured that out. So you're on your own. Let's be honest when it comes to breaking into the industry, because at a certain point, it gets specific, right? Like they're going to want specific things to see in your portfolio, your reel. So let's talk about that. What are those things? I'd like to hear from all three of you, 2D or CG animation. What are those things that you look for when you look in an animation reel, and you've seen many of them, all of you, that go, oh, that's different. This person, and I'm talking beyond just, oh, it's really smooth, although that could be one of the things. So go ahead. What's a great reel have?
Do you want to talk about animators, or do you want to talk?
Oh, animators. We're talking animators.
I mean, I was recruiting for many years, and so I would say that one of the most important things that you have to have is you have to show a spark. Even some animators that I saw that were not that great, they had a spark in their work. It was like a quality of acting. It was a good idea. It was a story moment. Obviously, you should already know that you need a good rig, you need a good story, you need to light it now, kind of. Like, it's very easy to light these things. You can't get away with just what you used to be able to get away with 5-10 years ago, which was like a play blast, because someone else is going to show from Esma in France a fully lit, rendered 3-minute short. So you're competing with those people, and you have to up your game and understand that you're gonna, if you want to get the top job, that you gotta play in the big leagues. And so I would really suggest that you really focus on a great performance, a great little moment that people are like, wow, did you see that? I remember, you know Allison Rutland? Yeah, you know. Of course. Allison is a great animator. She used to, I remember seeing her reel come in, and a lot of it was like visual effects work and like a mouse climbing down like a ladder or something. And then there was one shot at the end that was like this really like very, very emotional piece. And that was the one thing, that one shot got her, in my opinion, that job. She bookended it with a great shot at the beginning and a great shot at the end. And then sometimes people don't have the stuff in the middle. But man, you want to leave, because the reality is that people are pressing forward. They're like scrubbing through really quickly. And oh, what was that? You know, and so it's sad. Nobody watches these things from start to finish. So you have to grab somebody really quickly.
And also, I gotta add to that, Allison Rutland didn't do it on, like, the thing about breaking in, what I found for me that worked is you have to find a mentor. You have to find
A mentor,
somebody, and I know Allison worked with people, and that's what was a game changer for me, is find somebody whose work you admire and reach out to them and see if they can help you out, even give you an advice. Like, I took many years after I graduated Shirt, and I understood I had to up my game if I wanted to get where I wanted to get, and I took online courses. I took Anim Squad, I took Anim Collab, I took iAnimate, and I specifically chose specific instructors that I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to ask them questions. I liked their work, so that's also really important because you have to learn. You can't. It's like animation is like collaboration, and if you're in a vacuum and you're not learning, like nobody. Sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. So it's important to reach out to people and to try to learn from people who already done it.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did it when it comes to like just breaking into the industry. I did a video talking about go to Lightbox, go do these workshops, and build that networking. But in terms of just like animation portfolios and reels, I know that the reason why I got opportunities was because of short films that I did. Not necessarily the reels, but when I got reached out, it's mostly because they say, hey, we saw a short that you did. Even the 48-hour films that I did, they were dumb, they were funny, but at least it showed a bit of instinct and character. And I think that's the beautiful thing about like doing short films, is because it kind of shows how you think, not just as an animator, but as a filmmaker, how you compose shots, how you tell stories, and how you put it all together. Because I think if you want to, like, let's say, move and grow up in the industry, you kind of have to think about how all these come together. Like Anna said, like it's all collaborative. And also you have to also consider that like now there's so many different types of 2D animation that you can do. A lot of productions are looking for anime-esque productions. So all the stuff that I learned from school and how to get into like Pixar or Disney, whereas like the ones who do in the anime style, they want to see like, oh, we want to see like more Sakuga fight scenes, and that's something that if that's something you want to like look into, then you're gonna have to like study artists who do that. So I think also you kind of have to look at the work that's being done in these studios that you want to go for, and somehow cater to them. And sometimes like you'll even get opportunities like when one door closes, another opens. So I know when I made a reel, I got rejected from the studios that I really did want to get in, like Pixar, Disney. But even I got an email back from Blizzard saying, "Hey, we saw your student short. We like how you choose shots or compose and tell stories." So, for me at least, having personal projects really helped a lot, and that's why I'm always vouching for like try making a small short, less than 30 seconds, see what you can do, and that can be material for your reel and your portfolio.
That's great. I love that. I agree.
We are looking for animators. Email Andrew at songchain.studio. I am looking for animators. I will look at your portfolio.
What? Song chain.
Andrew at songchain.studio.
Okay, everybody just wrote that down. You're going to get a lot. So what I want to do, dive a little bit deeper in that. So on a reel, how important is it to have what I call body mechanics? So Toniko, I want to compliment you. I really feel like you're very good at this. Many times when I see your animation, what I'm looking at is movement stuff. Be it a fight scene, I don't know, but it might be, but a lot of walks and things like that you're really good at, and giving personality to that, but also just what I call body mechanics, that was sort of a Disney term, is that it feels natural, right? That you're able to move the joints and things around very naturally. That's one thing that people get impressed by, right? Really, it just moved very smoothly. It moved very naturally. Then there's the acting side. Oh, and do you have this performance shot like you were talking about, Andrew, about that one shot that she did that really was emotional? Should they have both? And I know it is a little hard to be that perfect animator that's great at both, but how important?
Yes, you have to have physicality, stuff that shows weight and body mechanics. There's no doubt about it. But you also have to have great performance. You know, one of the things I've been nerding out about, has anybody been nerding out on the AI voice changing stuff? You could talk like any actor you want. And if I were doing a dialogue test now, I would basically just like record my voice as Morgan Freeman and do something, because it's so freeing. I don't need to rip off anything from a performance, and you can do whatever you want. You can tell a whole bunch of story. So I don't know, I recommend that.
Interesting. I didn't know that was possible. That
It's
seems
amazing.
everything's being stolen today.
You could do a whole episode of Breaking Bad with like your own voice.
Oh my gosh. Question.
Okay, so kind of touching back to what they look for in portfolios, this like in terms of storyboarding, like I'm facing a dilemma here because like when is like I guess heavy too heavy in terms of a scene? Because I feel like my specialty in terms of what I want to do with scenes is visceral emotion, but also really heavy that's subliminal, like just serious scenes. And I think the best scene I've done so far in terms of a storyboard, it's my most powerful one, but it's, like I said, it's a heavy scene, and I don't want to depress people who are looking at it. But
Okay, I'm gonna change that slightly, but you're talking about doing a really heavy scene. You like heavy emotional scenes. You're good at it. She wants to lean into that. I'm guessing, and I'm applying this to animation too, because this is an animation talk. But you're talking specifically storyboarding. But the question being, can you depress them in your reel? Right? Is there a point where it's like too much? Like I shouldn't go there. Do you feel there's like a rule of thumb there of like, hey, keep it light, I guess. Right.
I mean, when it comes to reels, whether it's animation and storyboarding, I like to show a bit of variety in terms of whether it's heavy or light or comedic or dramatic. I want to showcase that I can do a bunch of different things, because if I go into the studio, then they'll know, okay, I can jump into a different production when this ends. Like I can stop Dragons 3 and move on to something like Shrek 5, which honestly I wish I got to work on. So I think it's good to have like a snippet of like what are some of your strongest moments in this project or your scene, and then put them in your reel, but then have a bigger version as its own standalone thing on the side. So if people are interested in it, at least the title is there in the reel, and then they can look it up if they want to. But
We're gonna have to. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, and I would just say just like small bits of that.
We're gonna have to cut it off, guys. I could see they weren't leaving because of you. It's 10:40. We're at that point, so I know they keep these things tight. So I want everybody to thank them for being here. This has been amazing. And I know I speak for all of them. Good luck in your career, and we're excited to see the future of animation from you guys. Thank you.